two guests now joining us for the next conversation, which is about competency-based curriculum, CBC, which way forward. We know what the president has said. He's going to take some action, and the action will be initiating some further conversations. So we'll start the conversations today. Before we welcome the guests, let me give you today's proverb. It's from Malawi. When you are on the back of an elephant, do not pretend there is no dew on the grass. When you're on the back of an elephant, do not pretend that there is no dew on the grass. Mm-hmm. Maybe it should also be do not forget that there is dew on the grass.
Right.
The Honorable Peter Kaluma is the Member of Parliament for Homa Bay Town constituency. Today is a Homa Bay Day. We've just had the Homa Bay Woman Rep, and the Homa Bay Town MP is now in the studio, sitting alongside Dr. Wandia Njoya, Senior Lecturer in Literature at Ednah University, and one who talks about very many things: education, land is not property. Is that what you say on Twitter? Land is not an investment, or is it? It's not. Land is not an investment, or land is not savings.
It's not property.
Land is not property. Very many things. Dr. Wandia, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We've heard you on the show on the phone.
Yes, I remember.
And you have avoided coming to the studio.
Yes, I have.
Thank you, God.
I'm telling you, it's finally there. Even Wishima calling him many times.
Peter Kaluma,
Hey.
we have invited you to the show a number of times. Thank you, God.
Yeah, but I've been following you. The show is very beautiful.
Following
I have to
us
say.
is one thing.
I'm happy it is Homa Bay Day.
Eh,
You know, Homa Bay is the one county which has never struggled with gender balance and equality. We currently have 3 women MPs at constituency level. We have a women rep. And you know, Homa Bay has become the first county west of Kenya to produce a female governor. So I hope when I leave, Governor Wanga will be here. Now
Well
that it is
done.
Homa Bay Day.
Now
Well
you can take a
done.
message to her.
It is the place for strong women leaders. I think you should come to Homa Bay.
You think so?
Yeah, please come down.
it's a beautiful thing. So, 3 constituency MPs.
Yes.
Name them.
Dr. Lillian Gogo, the MP for Rangwe, and the first to be re-elected in the history of Rangwe constituency, if you remember. You have Dr. Ivo Bara, the MP for Kabondo Kasipul, PhD holder on matters education, you remember. Also a second termer. And then we have the one you cannot defeat, the Honorable Millie Odhiambo, top lawyer, senior counsel, gender activist, a believer in human rights. That is how beautiful Homa Bay is. And then Millie is on her 4th term now.
Yep.
So this gender thing, though you wanted to
You guys
dissolve
have
parliament,
you've got it a while ago.
it was not an issue for us in Homa Bay. And you know, when people were still flip-flopping, like at Dr. Wandia's place, we have Governor Wanga, a lady who is barely, I think, 40, going to 40, the first female governor west of Kenya. Very beautiful.
I love the story.
Yeah, great.
I love the story. So it tells you it's the Kenyan constituents have no issue electing women.
Certainly.
This thing of being told, oh, you know, this community is very patriarchal, this community is this and the other, those are stories created by politicians
And Dr.
Try.
Wandia will agree.
to try and dissuade female candidates from vying.
I think Kenyans are ahead. Yeah, they're ahead of the politicians. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about CBC, competency-based curriculum. It was rolled out how many years ago, Ndu? 3.
3.5, about almost
Yep.
4 years now, yes.
So those that started the CBC at grade 3 are now in grade 6.
Yes.
And they are due to be joining junior secondary, grade 7. Come when?
January.
This January
This one
of
that's
January,
coming now,
not
now.
You know,
No, please.
the calendars have confused me.
2023 January.
20
When everybody goes back to school, the 3rd week of January 2023, because we know there's going to be a longer holiday. It's going to be 7 weeks because we've got the second batch of KCSE happening this year. We've also got the grade 6s with this assessment exam that they have. And then we're going to go to the Christmas holiday, come back and allow the KCP exams and the KCSE exams to complete. So ordinarily when the year is, properly going through, we would have open school the first week of January. But we've had COVID and we've had this, that, the other thing. So 3rd week of January, the school year goes back into its proper running, and grade 6s will now supposedly start junior secondary school in January.
Right. A new
Okay.
curriculum.
New
Rolling out as we phase out the old 844 curriculum.
Simultaneously, those who are sitting their KCPE will also be going to KCSE. You understand?
Yep.
Form 1. And you have JSS at the same time. So this is where one of the big bones of contention is. How on earth is this going to happen?
When 844 was being introduced and we were phasing out the previous one, the primary school was ending at standard 7. 844 comes and primary school ends at standard 8. There must have been some clash at some point.
There must have been then. Somehow they were able to balance it out. Okay.
Our teacher, City Muga, is not here. He'd have reminded us what he did as a headmaster at that point, taking his students. Dr. Wandia, you have thoughts and ideas and feelings about competency-based curriculum. Overall, what are those thoughts and feelings and ideas?
All right, let me just say I come to this as an educator, not an administrator. So the issue of the logistics are not quite my strength. What I said is that from the beginning, it was a conceptually flawed idea. Competency is used for working people. It is when you're training workers to do a specific task. So it's a very short-term training, and it is training for a specific task. So the first thing I was saying is that why are we teaching it to our children? So from there, everything to me is whatever else we have seen in the system, all the problems start from there. The fact that the idea is flawed. Because you see what happens once you don't do the work of conceptualizing what it is that you want, and you implement it anyway, and you refuse to answer our questions, then now all the problems we are seeing were inevitable. So I'm not surprised at all by what has happened. It was happening. I mean, I saw it from 2017, even before they implemented it, and they said we should not ask questions, we can't keep talking all the time, let's just implement. But then I asked, what are you implementing then? And they didn't answer. So we are where we are. Yeah.
Peter Kaluma was in Parliament when all those things were happening.
You see the manner in which the CBC program, if I were to call it so, was conceived, was poor. Our constitution at Article 10 talks about public participation being a national value and principle of governance. This model of education was brought in without even Parliament having to debate it, despite being a National Assembly. And remember, from the level of Parliament, on 5 occasions, the matter came to the floor on private members' motion. And we were jolted in debating it because each time a member brought a motion so that we discuss it, somebody went to court. And you know our sub judice or sub judice rule. So then the speaker, each time said, it is now in court. I remember the last one was an action brought by Harvey in the name of another, council member of the Law Society of Kenya. And you'll see if you went back to the Hansard. I was raising the issue with the speaker. We are the representatives of the people. To what extent should Parliament, defer to the court, which is a single individual, dealing a single matter for a party, on a matter of national concern we should be dealing with? So the first issue, of course, is conception. And Latif, I have no doubt in my mind that the manner this thing was brought in, the manner it was being forced on, I don't know whether you remember, the first minister to speak about CBC was Amina Mohamed.
Yeah.
And at the inception, she said we are introducing CBC. When, a report was, brought to her, I think an evaluation report of how it would work, she addressed the media and said, there is a problem with this thing, we're not ready to implement it. And you would remember how fast, she found herself from the
Out of the
Ministry of
ministry.
Education
To lighter duties.
to sports. And then came Professor Magoa, who comes and tells you it has to be implemented. You tell him there is a problem with the idea that you give assignments to children, telling them with the assistance of your parents. You have children who are orphans. You have children in boarding schools. We have children who are of single parents. We have children whose parents are only able to provide for them because they are working at night shifts. We have people securing our property, the watchmen, the guards, people like the media. Latif, you are here sometimes up to very late in the night. As a member of Parliament closes down at 7. When I have to travel home with the jam in Nairobi, a child who is doing CBC in lower primary is still seated there waiting for me. When you say with the assistance of the parent, what do you mean? We have children whose parents are not educated, and it is not their fault. They have to learn. You have children whose parents do not have a phone like this, but you are saying with the assistance of a parent using this research mode. So you have the idea, looking at it keenly, that this thing was being pushed from somewhere. And Latif, without going deep into my challenges against this CBC, if you looked at my Twitter yesterday, it's not the first one I'm making on this. I've been up to 7 of them, if you look at my account, since inception, for the last 3 years. The fact of the matter is that it appears to me as a policy maker and also a parent that this CBC thing is a weaker version of the Cambridge system, the UK Cambridge system. I'm calling it a weaker version because the Cambridge system in UK has facilities, okay? Is well funded, has resources. This one has no resources, has no funding, has nothing. And Latif, you remember even teachers who are to be trained on CBC, it was for how long? 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they tell you they have shifted their mentality from 844
Now
to
to
CBC in 2 weeks. And remember the teachers who had issues. Latif, you may be forgetting, but up to 285 teachers were interdicted. And you are asking me the question, what did I do about it? I'm the one who brought petition to Parliament, which got those teachers reinstated. And Nancy Macharia will tell you, you cannot punish teachers because they raised issues with the program. They are not just teachers. They are also parents.
They are stakeholders.
Children. They are stakeholders.
They are giving a feedback.
So the fact of the matter is that this thing appears to have been imposed, and I don't think I would be very far if I question the interest, particularly of the UK government,
in this particular
imposing this thing.
When you talk about this and listening to you two, even listening to everybody else who has raised concerns about CBC, you'd imagine that somebody who is completely uninformed about education sat down and drafted something called CBC. Yet this has come from an institution that has people who are educationists, who live, breathe education day in, day out, the Kenya Institute for Curriculum Development, and others. And it was not just a 1-week seminar that they went and locked themselves up somewhere in Manzoni and came and said, Eureka, we have this. It was following several reports, the COECH report and others looking into education and our education system that birthed CBC. So how can you say that it was flawed, conceptually flawed, Dr. Njoka?
All right. I don't think there was any research done, and I'll tell you based on the evidence I have. First of all, when I looked for the documents, where did this thing come from? First thing I did, I looked at the curriculum framework, which was released by KICD. It's very uninformative, and in fact, I kept asking them, if you check my appearances on the media and my Twitter handle, I asked them, where did you get this idea from? Because the citations, the books you have cited, because I'm an academic, that's what I look at. The books you have cited do not talk about CBC or competency. So where did you get this thing from? Who came up with it, so that we can ask them the questions we have about why competency? We never got those answers. So I started digging. The next thing I found was a document which was on the UNESCO website, where it said that competency was given to the Kenya government in 2017. They had no funding. No, I think 2016. They had no funding. So the British Council promised to fund it in 2017. So in fact, actually, the decision was announced beginning 2017, and Matiang'i is the one who launched the pilot after elections of 2017. So that's the second thing I found. Apart from that, there's very little on competency, except that now later on, after digging a lot more, I found this article by an education scholar in Turkey who said that nobody knows where this idea of competency, especially at primary school, came from. But his suggestion is that it came from the business corporations. And what they did was there were several interests in having a competency curriculum. One, of course, was technology. If you technologize the education system, it means the tech companies get business. So the idea of competency started with the tech companies. They funded journals even to publish in favor of competency, but it was never something that was being talked about within academic circles. So they sponsor these journals, and then they now start also putting pressure on global bodies like OECD, UNESCO. And in fact, in 2016, there was a letter from a number of academics from the US. They wrote an open letter complaining about the pressure that these corporations were putting on the education system in the US. And the system is very similar to what we are calling CBC here. So there's a whole field, in fact, that I discovered of what is called, I think it's called global education policy, about policy travel, about how policies are made in the US, and then the corporations start, pushing global continental bodies to impose them. So they tried Europe. It didn't quite work because Europe's education is decentralized. So in every area, the teachers would say, no, this doesn't make sense. They tried the US with the Common Core. It's not doing very well. So Africa is on the last leg of this idea, but we are the ones who are implementing it with more fujo than all the other continents.
More vigor than everybody else.
Yeah. So I'm not convinced that KICD did the research, and that's why they couldn't answer our questions.
So are we saying, essentially, it can be inference or just basically plain logic, that there wasn't necessarily something wrong with the curriculum under which Kenyan learners were learning, but there was an imposition for another curriculum because it was being pushed from an external force. So we have talked a lot. People have said things. People have made suggestions. Oh, well, 844 did not give an all-rounded, approach to education. So people would cram for exams. They wouldn't really study. They didn't know the stuff of the content of this, or they didn't know the stuff of the contents. So they would study for exams, and that was it. Ask somebody who's just finished KCSE to tell you some of the things that they've, studied, and they were not able to do so. That has been said. So in as much as that could have been tweaked a little bit here and there, are we saying that there was nothing wrong, really, with the 844 system, but that there's been something that has then been forced on Kenya and other countries? Because there's a list around the continent, and which may give rise to some of the things that you're saying. Namibia, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Malawi, Tanzania are having the same problems with this CBC that we are talking about in Kenya today. So that could give rise to this argument that you raised. So was there anything wrong with 844 inherently?
We don't look at systems as wrong or right. What we do is we look at what are the challenges. The challenges first of all, we need to remember that teachers, as they are teaching, they are generating their own knowledge. They are able to tell you, this is where the problems are. This is what we could do to fix the system. That was not done. Instead, we got a curriculum from elsewhere and imposed it on the system and said, this curriculum is going to solve the challenges you people are facing. And in fact, when I wrote in 2017, January, I said that that's a big problem. You don't impose things from outside. You get local solutions. You check what it is that the teachers are saying, and then you fix the education system that way. So that's the first problem that we had, that we didn't really listen to the teachers. The second one was that, KICD will tell you, and they kept telling us that they had a needs assessment report. In 2018, I kept asking for it. Show us this needs assessment report so that we can see whether competency solves the problems that you're talking about. Because I can say like two of the issues they were saying why we needed competency. One was what you're saying about cramming. Cramming is not a problem of curriculum. It's a problem of opportunities after school. If the economy is not growing and people are not getting jobs after they graduate, then exams become more important. And so people put more emphasis on exams so that you get higher marks to enter the very small market that we have. So I was telling them in 2017, you can't say that curriculum will address the exam problem. The second thing I've heard them saying is that parents were not involved in children's lives. How did they determine that? Did they do a research on families in Kenya to say the parents are not involved in children's lives and they're not involved in the homework?
Well, the reaction from parents now tells you
that there's a big difference. Because suddenly they're being involved in this homework. Buy this, keep this box, keep the other thing.
The ones doing the homework.
They're supervising the assignment.
But what does involvement mean? Are we saying that an illiterate person or a person who has not gone far in education has nothing to teach their child? It's a very middle class, sorry to say, it's a very middle class conception of parenting. And what is so wrong about it, because I know there's a Pan-Africanist here, this comes from a racist idea of black families being, not proper families. And I've written about this family where the deadbeat dads, welfare moms. That narrative from the 70s is what was brought to Kenya through the evangelical church, where now they start saying, women stay at home, do the homeschooling, that kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 model of the middle class Nairobi family. So that was what they were appealing to. So I've seen in reports, even by UNESCO, saying that the problem with African fathers is that they don't do homework with their children. How do you determine that how did they go to every family and find that out? Is doing homework the only way parents can be involved with children? Are we saying that parents cannot educate children in other things outside the school curriculum? There's so many problems with some of these narratives, and yet they used them to give us this curriculum. And this goes to a wider story of UNESCO and these, big global corporations bringing curriculum that was initially meant for Black American education. There's a history of Africans getting those kinds of policies. So even competency had been experimented on largely Black schools in Philadelphia. So they bring that here. It's not being given to the kids of Silicon Valley in California. It's to poor Black dominated schools. That's what they're bringing here. And I'm sorry to say that Kenyan education professors have dropped the ball. They have refused to do the work. I should not be here.
They should be the ones talking.
They should be the ones talking, but they haven't done the work, because every time when you look at their work, it's always about commission this, commission that, commission the other. And they never analyze, where are these ideas that we are being brought, where are they coming from?
What's the source? Mwashima, before you take a break, please react.
You see, Latif, I am a product of the 844 system. The system as conceived and initially implemented was very good. I remember from early primary, and I think Dr. Wandia would confirm, we had these practical courses. We were doing arts, we were doing crafts, we were doing carpentry, masonry, music, animal husbandry, agriculture, home science. By the time I was in Standard 6, I left my home to live with a primary head teacher elsewhere. And I was the one cooking for him. And those ugali, hard African ugali from millet. You get it? And it was always fine. I would wash my things, okay?
Yep.
I would look at an animal, I can tell you whether it is a rabbit, it is a chicken, it is a pig, it is a cow. And just by look, I would predict with 90% probability the disease the animal was suffering from. We were taught more so in the rural context, just look at a cow and you know whether you need insemination, whether it is ready for it. I mean, we had it, whether it is cash crops or, food crops. We knew the type of soil, the type of fertilizer, how to do compost manure. Like I'll tell you, by the time we were doing primary, even mixing mortar. And I don't know whether you remember, we would even build something for practicals, which would be graded. In terms of music, we knew all instruments. We would not just, play, but make a do the drums, you do the singing.
You make what? Did you call it orutu?
Orutu. Okay. Orutu, the string, instrument. The necklace you see on Dr. Wandia is something I would do in Standard 2. We were carving rungus, doing ropes, these practical things. Now, over time, across time, because of urban and rural, 844 went theoretical. And I have to admit, we left the practical, and a lot of theory was going in. To me, the key was not to bring a foreign program and impose it without looking at circumstances. We could be having knowledge-based or competency-based programs in the US, in the UK, in Finland, and in Africa, but implementation and their approaches are different and must be based on circumstances. When you want to implement CBC in Kenya, and I think why 844 moved from 7 at primary to 8, we were looking at the idea that not all our primary schools have sister secondary schools. What is the age by which pupil who has, passed KCSE can go and board. So you see that facing. And so in as much as it was knowledge-based as initially conceived, we were looking at this age, Kaluma can now leave Ndiru Primary School and go to Alliance.
And board.
And go to Rapogi. And he can board without thinking so much of the parent and be focused in their studies.
And not only that, they can actually go by themselves. They don't have to be
by
taken
the way,
to
parents
school
were not taking us. I can tell you, we had buses moving from our Rodiko Pany market for over 6 hours, and you're holding the javelin. We used to, for 6 hours, and this is a distance of just some 80 kilometers.
Yes.
And you are holding it there.
Going to school.
And by the way, then you are in a matatu, you are in and you are seeing the road as you move. And it is rackety there. And you are alone. No parent is there. You are being taught to be a man or a woman of the world. Look at what CBC is now proposing. And I can tell you, I didn't just go through 844. I have a child who is actually doing KCSE this year. I have another one in Form 1. I have my my second last born son, named after me, who started in 844. He's now supposed to go secondary junior. And I can tell you, we were supplied with schools to choose. It's a boy aged 11. You are telling me, do you want to choose Kapsabet or Moi teaching referral or some school somewhere? Like, this is a 10 to 12-year-old boy. Does he take care of that? Look at it more critically. When you go to Ndiru Primary School in Homa Bay town where I studied, I'm just starting up a secondary school. Okay? How do you compare a child being told you'll move from, Ndiru to a far-off school? Okay? At that age. It's not a boarding. Or you'll move from Ndiru to Ndiru, which is starting up, against a child moving from Nairobi Primary School to Nairobi School, or Alliance Primary. So you see, you have siloed students, and really you are advantaging so many of them while you are disadvantaging, the others. So what we needed to do, the world, of course, is changing. We would have gone back to 844 as initially conceived and implemented. And because we have modernization and we have the technical skills, there are things like computer, literacy.
Could have introduced them.
We inject those, but remember still that facilities are varied in the country.
That's true.
What Turkana has is not what Nairobi has. You saw those ones who are being taught swimming on the dust somewhere.
Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah, so
Let's take a
circumstances
break.
must inform the system and implementation. And that is what we are not doing because we've become too dictatorial. You get a minister talking at the people,
Instead of listening to the people.
not talking with the people.
Let's take a break.
If I don't know about CBC and I'm a member of parliament, what of that, parent in a corner in Njoya?
The Honorable Peter Kaluma, Homa Bay Town MP, and Dr. Wandia Njoya, lecturer at Ednah University and an education enthusiast, are our guests this morning. We're talking about CBC, so which way forward? The president says he'll soon constitute a task force to start a conversation again about CBC. Let's wait for him to come back, but let's start our conversation. Is it November or October when we'll be running?
It is in October. Last Sunday of October, the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon will take place. Folks are registering for it. You can register for the full marathon, 42 kilometers, isn't it?
Yep.
21 kilometers is the half marathon.
Yep.
There's a 10 km.
Yep.
There's a 5 km walk. There are many things that you can do. Involve everybody in the family.
We don't call it walk, we call it family fun run.
Okay. Family fun run walk. And so there's an opportunity for you to do that. Registration is ongoing on Standard Chartered website. An opportunity for you to come out, get some fitness in, be an athlete for a day, and hopefully it be something that will be continuous thereafter. But the great thing about this is that it goes towards making sure that there are young people around the country who may not go to school, who will then get an opportunity to do that, be involved in beginning levels of entrepreneurship and things like that. So you running affects somebody's life positively in the future.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Just look at some of the comments that are coming in on social media. Ibrahim says CBC makes no sense. We are turning our primary schools into vocational training centers. They are youth polytechnics for those who find academic difficult. At this rate, we'll have a nation of Juakali artisans. Let's get back our 844 system as initially constituted together with Kening. It goes hand in hand. Kiplagat says, tabia ya walimu kukula kuku ya wazazi itakoma kabisa. We go back to 844. There's very many other comments coming in. But now looking at it practically, CBC has been rolled out. It's there. It's been there for 3 years. The president says, let's have a conversation. What do you see as the way forward? What should we do? Should we say, scrap CBC, forget those 3 years that we've done, let's re-engineer the children? What should we do now where we are?
Yes, Latif, we are on induction now as members of parliament. Immediately we sit. I think it will be next week, and I pray so. I will bring a motion to terminate CBC and to revert to 844. We get out of this confusion before we destroy, the future for society, our children, as we watch. And I think I'll be doing this on the ground, not only that the program is unconstitutional, because you see, public participation has to be there, and it did not happen. If as a leader I don't know about this thing, if as a leader, as I was saying, as CS has no, reason to talk to me, you can imagine what the other people outside there is thinking about. We have a challenge with implementation. We have a challenge with the content. We have a challenge with the structure. These are the things we are talking about. We have a challenge with the resources around, the program. Look, we have teachers training colleges across the country, and people are not asking. And they are churning graduates each year. Eric, do you know when you go down there, we have so many trained teachers who are retiring without stepping into classroom.
Yep.
And yet we have a very inadequate number of teachers outside here. So number one is the number of teachers and resource persons to help with the program or any education system. Number two is whether they are trained. Number three, whether we have the facilities. You may talk your CBC, but really, until you make it possible for every school in the country to have electricity and to be at some good level, we must go for, a program that allows each and every student or pupil to become somebody. And I think we can revamp other than, pushing these things. I'm personally, going to Parliament to, move a motion. I hope we'll get a quick resolution of the House to scrap off, this thing instead of waiting for even those things we call task forces.
Dr. Njoya, what should the focus be? Excuse me. What should the focus be? Because then, from what we are discussing here, it would seem as though, look, the system that this essentially was coming to replace, sure, had issues. Should the focus be on sorting out what some of those issues are, bring back the practice, as it were, stop steeping this entire thing in theory alone and bring in the practical as well? Where should the focus be? It has become clear that perhaps the CBC, in the way in which it is currently constituted, is not going to work. Where should we be going with this?
I think the first thing is to diagnose the problem. And one of the things I was telling KICD is that they diagnosed it wrong. Like this split we are saying between theory and practice is wrong. It's wrong because between the ages of 6 and 16, there's really you are not expecting a child to be driving a car or something. So a lot of the basics that we are giving children between up to the age of around 16, 18 is going to be theoretical. Because what happens is that we make decisions about what we do based on what we know. So you can't say we are not going to teach children knowledge because what all they need to do is practice. That is creating a robot, basically, because robots are the ones who act without thinking. We don't want robots. So I think first we have to diagnose the problem correctly. Then now the second thing is that we need to stop looking at it like two different pairs of shoes. That's not what education is. Education is children and teachers in a class trying to learn something that will be useful for when they become adults. It's that simple. Whether you call it CBC or 844 is really a matter for administrators. But for the child in the class, what they are there for is knowledge. And the teacher is there to teach it. So to remove CBC isn't saying that now we are going back to something else. It's still the same children. We're not getting new children. We are just going to keep on teaching them, but teaching them differently. That's all it means. We are not. It's not like putting on a different shoe. I think that Kenyans have to conceptually get it out of their heads that it's like I was going to Mombasa, now I'm going to Kisumu. No, that's not how it is. I am still going to Kisumu, but I'm deciding whether to go with SGR or a car or a plane. That's what you're doing. You're still going.
Let me ask this.
Yeah.
Currently, are the children being taught differently? Apart from being given homework and being told, go and work with your parent or work with somebody else at home, are they being taught differently?
Yes, they are.
How?
And that's what we are saying is a problem for us. They are being taught differently in the sense that what competency is at the core of the concept is that somebody must show practically what they are learning in class. So what the problem is, with children, they can't always explain or be tested on what they are doing. So, for example, there's a lesson which I saw in the curriculum, which was very crazy. Children are jumping and dancing, and in a normal classroom, you're just happy that the kids are happy. You're not asking for anything. You jump, you dance, and they go home. They have exercised themselves. They have improved their motor skills. That's enough. But what CBC does is to say, number one, we need proof that you people jumped. So take pictures. So that's why you're seeing all these pictures. Take pictures, upload them on the NEC website. The second thing they are saying is that now children must show competence in knowing why they jumped. Why should a 7-year-old know why they jumped? Who cares? So now the kids are being asked, why were you happy when you were jumping?
And how do you say that answer is right?
And how do you say that answer is right? Yeah,
but doesn't it help the child to
it
start thinking, okay, so I was jumping, this is what I was feeling, this is what I felt.
At that
Or if
age,
they
they're not
did-
supposed to be thinking
What
like
if a child
that.
answers, if you ask, why is the child in this picture jumping? What if the child answers, because the teacher told him to?
That's okay. Is it
How,
not?
now, the question is, how do you judge that that is the correct answer? If another answer is the child jumped because he's happy, another answer is the child jumped because he needed to
teacher
go to
said-
the bathroom.
There'll be a follow-up
How do
question.
you
What
know-
makes you think that this child was jumping because they're happy?
Now you're
or
asking a
because they've been
6-year-old
asked?
that follow-up question. What makes you think that this child was jumping as a result of his happiness or sadness? Do you see what we are doing?
Exactly. And
Yeah,
teachers
you're
teachers
opening up the
should not
child's
be
minds.
grade. No. Okay, actually, I wanted to get to that. You don't ask children those kinds of questions at that age, because what you're doing is that you're making them very self-conscious. They start to ask, am I doing the right thing? Has it been approved? Did teacher say it's okay? And that has psychological implications for when they're adults. They grow up not having a motivation of their own, being able to do things intrinsically for their own purpose, because they're always being used to asking for permission, being graded for every simple thing that they do. So these are the questions we were asking. Do we want to be doing this to children at 6? And what does it mean for when they become adults? And those are the questions that KICD didn't want to answer. These are very serious psychological implications. I mean, we are asking children to judge things that university students judge. It's university students in kinetics or whatever who are going to tell you this is what jumping does, this muscle moves here, the message from the brain, and I don't know what. That's for university students. But for kids, you want them to first enjoy jumping, to feel their bodies, to be aware of their muscles, and to have fun. That's it. That's what it means to be a child. So if you're already asking them to explain why they are doing things that should come naturally to them, when they are 25, they will have no self-confidence, because they'll be so used to doing everything and waiting for the teacher to judge it.
There'll be
or
rational people.
And a headmaster to judge it. These are the small, inconsequential things which parents don't care about, unfortunately, that some of us were asking. Do we want this kind of thing to be done to our children? I say no. We should let the children enjoy who they are. We should stop testing it. We should stop asking questions and let them learn. But let me just say, for me, there are 3 things that need to go. One is this transition. I think it's very crazy. Kenya has no resources, but we want to build schools which are not necessary. And yet we have primary schools that have extra classes, which were initially for Standard 7 and Standard 8. Let the kids continue grade 7, grade 8 in their primary schools. The second thing is the assessments. The assessments are too many. I don't think even the NEC has the capacity to look at all those grades. Millions of grades every year. That's ridiculous. But you see, that's why they are doing the multiple choice, because they don't want to do the work of looking at how are children learning. And I think there are tenders also to do with that, because you need machines to mark
Ever
those bubbles and all that. So that has to be removed. And then the third one is parental involvement. I think there are other ways to encourage parents to be involved in their children's lives. Doing homework is not it, and it's not the role of the education ministry to tell parents what to do. That's a role of culture. That's a role of the church. All these other social institutions, that's their work. Why is the education system taking work? Already it can't even manage education. So why are they making parenting a problem? So those 3 issues, if they are removed, I don't care what you call the system, because I think the content is the same. I don't care what you call the system, but remove those things so that we are not all nervous about what next. Because, and this is what I said, that we are going to be nervous, troubleshooting for the next 5 years. I predicted it, and here we are.
We are doing the same.
Latif, parents are not being involved in assisting or supervising homework. The fact of the matter is that it is the parents doing homework. That is, and check any CBC parent like myself across. I was.
Why are you doing
I
homework?
was
You're
at
supposed to
home
be
over the
assisting your
weekend.
child.
Yeah, let me tell you. You know, these children have also their older, siblings.
Yeah.
And they have their mother. So I'm at home over the weekend, and this child, the assignment is to do to make a puppet. And the boy is struggling on, how to do it. And I find, his older siblings so I'm telling them, are you the one doing it or him? It reverts to him, and the boy is stuck. I go in the evening, and the mother is now struggling to study how to make a puppet. This is the fact of the matter. Whether it is beads, it is the parents doing the thing. And if you doubted it, that if I don't know whether you've seen the practicals across the country, when it is towards end term, you see from Turkana to Kwale, and they are all over social media. They are learning how to make some wheelbarrow with something. Everybody is pushing some wheelbarrow made by themselves. And then they're the same. Where is the innovation age? Let me tell you something where I agree with, Dr. Wandia. As a lawyer, the best legal mind as a judge we have ever had in the world, in the Commonwealth, is a judge called Lord Denning. Lord Denning was initially a mathematician, not a lawyer. Remember the people in the legal profession, Dr. Wandia, the people who left college with first classes and others, are not the best legal practitioners as advocates outside here. When you are saying you are going for knowledge-based or competency-based or talent-based program, at what level are you going to identify the true talent or knowledge of this child, and with what skills? And I was telling you, if you are to identify it that way, then with the resource inadequacies we have in Kenya, possibly a child in primary loves maths and is doing better in it because the only good teacher or the only teacher they have is a maths teacher. They don't have proper exposure in the others. And I think that could be what was happening. I can tell you from primary grade 1 to what was standard 7 then, I failed in mathematics, but we just got a right teacher in mathematics in standard 8. And by the time I was doing KCSE, I was the best student in mathematics in Kenya. Okay? And so that at the time of KCSE, I hate history, I hate theory. Because remember the question, you've seen it on my Twitter. Why do I need to be taught who prophesied where Jesus would be born? Or that he would be born by a virgin? Teach me the values out of religion. Teach me the morals, the ethical principles, not which prophet was a prophet of love or wherever that we cram. Now, when you say you are going to identify at what level, and so I'm saying, let us allow people to learn generally. As Dr. is advising, don't have, particularly pupils, ask why they should do things before they do them. Let them do them, that is curiosity, and let them learn why and the effect of their doing it, later on. But allow, people to settle in their careers as they move along. I can tell you, I'm now very happy as a lawyer. I was lecturing law. I've published books before I entered parliament. And anybody outside there will tell you, bring me this lawyer who learned under CBC from England or the US on any topic of law. We will put them there. Let people have their career choices as they go based on circumstance. Don't disable some people completely because they cannot have the facilities to be because of something imposed by foreigners called in the CBC.
When the president comes back and gives direction on what his thoughts are on the CBC, he says he's going to form a task force. We'll call you back again. And let's look at that. So this is what the president is saying. So this is the direction he's taking. When you take your motion to Parliament, we'll also ask you to come back.
Thank you.
And let's look at the motion as well. I want to read this comment from Chris Michaels. He says, this is personal. I'm a product of 844, and it took me 5 years after university to get the proper experience to be competent at a job that I had studied for 16 years. And I'm in the market competing with 20-year-old guys with the same experience as me.
That's computer and others. I think that is the challenge. Let him engage his time to learn where the modern world is going. And by the way, traditional courses like law are collapsing. People are now into cyber security, technology, and other things. You go to
Advanced.
countries like Estonia, these things you call a lawyer going to court is no longer there. You sit with the new and you
And a
mediate.
computer will be
You
your
go
lawyer.
home.
Ha.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wandia Njoya, Senior Lecturer at Day State University and Education Enthusiast, and the Honorable Peter Kaluma, Homa Bay Town MP. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.